Okay, I'm sharing my screen. Can everyone see my presentation?
Yes, Ben, it's very clear.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Like Andy said, I'm Ben Burroughs. I'm the agricultural attaché here in Buenos Aires, Argentina. I'm just very excited and thankful for the opportunity to speak with you all today, especially since the products that you make and we see an opportunity down here. There's a lot of potential, and especially for smaller scale shipments and specialty products. There's a lot of opportunity here in Argentina. So it's an incredible country. We have a phenomenal team here at the embassy, and they have the experience and the connections to help you. Market is always changing, and with a little openness and flexibility, you'll be able to take advantage of it. And that's why we've titled this presentation Dynamic Argentina. Okay. So a little bit of information about Argentina if you're not familiar. It's down there in blue on the southern end of South America, and it's made a little bit isolated and unique in some ways. Argentines speak Spanish, but they have a distinctive accent. It almost sounds a little bit of Italian, and that's because they had a lot of immigration from Italy and Spain at the beginning of the 20th century. Its capital, Buenos Aires, is on the coast, and it's one of the largest cities in the Western Hemisphere. It's a huge country, second biggest economy and land area in South America, and it's about 1/3 the size of the continental United States. From north to south, if you were to put it onto North America, it would stretch from Winnipeg in Canada down to Mexico City. Now that all sounds a little bit daunting, that size, but really the population lives in Buenos Aires metro area, and another third lives within a 10-hour drive of Buenos Aires. So basically, you've got 2/3 of the country living within a day's travel of the main port, and that includes the vast majority of the middle class and upper class consumers that are most your products. Now, because Argentina has so much land, they are an exporter of agricultural products, along with minerals and oil and other things. So even though they're an industrialized country with a diversified economy and a large middle class, there's some variability. When commodity prices are high, things go really well in Argentina. But when prices are lower, times can be leaner. So you may have seen some recent headlines about debt negotiations, but the new government has gotten its foreign bondholders to give it more flexibility in repaying those loans. And the new government is also more likely to support policies to stimulate the economy. Right now, the OECD is projecting a growth rate of 3.2% for Argentina as it emerges from the COVID-19 pandemic in 2021. Advance. Okay, so as I mentioned, because of its land and climate, Argentina produces a lot of the same things the US does. Soybeans, corn, wheat, beef, dairy, citrus, apple, wine, even sugar. And they also have a lot of South American neighbors that produce tropical products, which they import. So if you're trying to sell those sort of same raw commodities, it can be a bit of a challenge. But that's why I'm so excited to speak with you all today, because you have a lot of the products that aren't produced in Argentina that its citizens really want. I talked a little about Argentina being somewhat isolated geographically, but one of the nice things about that is that they're sometimes a few years behind the US in picking up on food trends, and you can capitalize on that. I mentioned Argentina's historic ties to Europe. European exporters are active in the market, but because of that tie, that connection, Argentine palate is more ready to accept foods like we have in the US. It's not really a tough sell sometimes like it can be in Asian markets to get them to adopt foods that we would normally eat in the US. And further, kind of despite some of the legacy prestige that's associated with European luxury products, we figured out how to gain some advantages. And one of those is corporate social responsibility. US companies have had a lot of success in touting their certifications and telling their story of sustainability and the positive things they're doing in the world. So if you have that story that you can tell along with your products, that'll go a long way in this market. So, another thing, we talk about these, the perceptions of the US and Europe and Argentina. While European food is kind of seen as traditional, American food is seen as fun. And so Argentines are quick to embrace American food trends. The Argentine upper class loves to travel, especially to Miami, and also New York and California, and they bring back products and trends from those cities. Of course, people of all classes watch a lot of US movies and TV shows. The article in the bottom left-hand corner is how to make ribs like in the show House of Cards. And if you walk around kind of the trendier neighborhoods in Buenos Aires, it's hard to go a block without running into a new restaurant selling American style artisanal burgers or craft beer or even fancy donuts. But more broadly, the Argentine middle class is just beginning to understand the shift in US food that has occurred over the last 30 years as US food companies have embraced healthy ingredients, organic food, production techniques. And because of its relative isolation and lack of competition, Argentine grocery stores have many fewer SKUs than we do in the US. And in the last few years, before this pandemic hit and all the travel restrictions came into place, our office has had a lot of success bringing Argentine importers to the United States. And they're always kind of blown away by the variety and the quality of food that's available in US grocery stores compared to what's available in Argentina. And when we take them to these stores, when we have them meet with product exporters, they tell us that if they can just get a few of these products in front of the customers, there's a huge demand. And we've seen it even in this COVID year that's been so tough for everyone economically. We've been making brand new sales as a result of some of the trade shows we've done last year, bringing Argentines to the US. So there is a lot of opportunity even in this time period. So a little bit about our comparative advantage and what it is that our US products bring to the table in Argentina. I mentioned already the perception of quality and the fun factor, but one huge advantage is just packaging and convenience. On the right, you can see a very common product in the Argentine market, which is bagged milk. Now, this is milk that comes in a non-resealable container that requires a special holder, or you have to pour it out into a jug. Otherwise just falls over in the refrigerator. This product was introduced in the late 1960s when it was seen as an advance over the glass bottles that were traditional, with the milkman. But then it's just kind of stayed. In fact, almost no Argentine food comes in resealable containers or bags. And chances are the packaging that you're already using is going to be ahead of the curve in Argentina. And anything that is like special in the US is going to really stand out down here. Argentine society is also experiencing the same shifts that we have seen in other countries around the world. There are more dual income households, more working longer hours, with much less time to devote to food preparation. So ready to eat, grab and go foods and snacks are rising in popularity like they are in the US. In terms of private label, chain supermarkets have been growing their market share in recent years, and they're competing with one another and with the small neighborhood shops. And so they're looking for private label items that they can use to bring in customer and secure their loyalty. And so if they can highlight an imported product that only they have with their name on it, then they see a huge advantage there. Now, specialty products is kind of a catch-all, but in particular, I want to highlight ingredients. Some of the big Argentine food companies want to make domestically produced versions of the new products that are available in the US and Europe, but sometimes they don't have the capacity to make the specialty ingredients because of the necessary investment in equipment or the difficulty, just technical difficulty in manufacturing. So this could include like alternative flours or meals, protein powders, certain fibers, or perhaps ingredients that are certified as free from or non-allergenic that are specialty items in that way. In terms of alcohol, many bars would like to expand their offerings of imported liquor, and a lot of the higher end bottle shops would like to stock up on more US beer and wine. There's an active secondary market already for US alcoholic beverages on Argentina's version of eBay or PayPal called Mercado Pago. But one of the challenges here with alcohol can be finding the volume of products to ship that works for both exporters and importers. I've been throwing a lot at you kind of quick. I've been rushing a bit, but I am excited to slow down a little bit and fill you in on this health and nutrition wellness market. I want to take a minute to highlight some of this data because this is fascinating to me. The chart on the left shows data from Euromonitor, highlighting the growth in health and wellness products in recent years. And from left to right, you have the most recent annual growth, then average annual growth over the last 5 years, and finally total growth over the last 5 years. And as you can see, it's been phenomenal, and it's why we're so excited, that you who make and sell and export some of these specialty products that kind of can fall into this nutrition and wellness category, really have an opportunity to cash in on this growth. Now, what explains the growth? Part of it, of course, is that it's growing from a smaller base, but really, I believe that healthy food strikes a chord in Argentine culture. In the US, we have a little bit more of a pharmaceutical approach sometimes. If you're having trouble sleeping or have high blood pressure or you're overweight, your first instinct might be to reach for a pill. But in Argentina, people think diet and exercise. The picture on the right is from a few weeks back. It's people exercising in the park, which kind of seems normal. But you need to realize what this picture is taken from is Argentina had a really strict COVID-19 lockdown. And people hadn't been allowed outside in months. And so a few weeks ago, the government said people could start exercising in the parks between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. And then suddenly you have these huge crowds out in the park at night. Everyone's running, everyone's jogging, rollerblading, doing what they can to get in shape. And it was the Southern Hemisphere winter, and people are fighting for the chance to run in 30-degree weather in the dark. So health and fitness are pretty important to Argentines. But in the months that we've had since that picture was taken, there's been some restrictions on movement, so people are more able to move around the country. They're able to eat outside a little bit more in restaurants, and the weather's picked up. So economic activity is really starting to pick up as well. Here you can see a broader list of products that we've identified as having some of the best prospects in Argentina. The free from products really have a lot of potential, both at a retail and on a food service level. In recent years, the restaurant menus have begun labeling certain items with symbols like you see in the US for gluten-free or vegan or dairy-free and other things. So in general, Argentines are going to be more willing to trust those labels if they're from the US. So if you're in a supermarket or a specialty store and you see that it's a US product that says it's free from, they have trust in US manufacturing, they have trust in FDA, they have trust in those sort of statements, especially from US products. And I mean, in general, there's just kind of a health halo associated with the United States because of that inherent trust in our food safety system. In Argentina, there's a lot of small specialty shops called dieteticas that specialize in healthy and natural and organic ingredients. But when I walk into those stores and I look around at the kind of free from packaged food, like gluten-free, things like that, I see a lot of products that remind me of what was available in the US 10 years ago. And the gluten-free goods don't really look quite normal or super appetizing. And so I think that in that area, we have a huge advantage if we can get some exporters operating down there more than we currently have. Condiments are also growing in popularity. Traditionally in Argentina, the only condiments available were sort of olive oil, vinegar, chimichurri, and mayonnaise. But imported sauces and spice mixes are something that like smaller retailers especially like to stock up as a way on to compete with bigger chains. And speaking of the bigger chains, right now they are streamlining and really focusing on competing on cost. And so sometimes they're not carrying quite the range of products they did a few years ago. But overall, the retail sector is doing really well, and they've been supercharged by the COVID-19 pandemic, because as money has sort of flowed from the restaurant sector into the retail sector, stores are using that to make investments, to draw in more customers, and imported products are often used as a kind of lure to bring people into the stores. You see this both in the big supermarkets and also in the neighborhood shops. They like to put imports right out front near the entrance, and anything with attractive or interesting packaging is especially going to be a big hit. So as you enter the Argentine market, there are some similarities and differences with doing business in the US. And there are some things that, I'd hope for you to keep in mind. Responsiveness and relationship building are key to success. And the flow of deal making can be a little bit different. You need to keep in touch. And Argentines, like a lot of Latin Americans, love using WhatsApp on their phone to stay connected, more than email, more than text messaging. So download WhatsApp immediately before you even start doing business in Argentina if you don't have it already. It's the way that a lot of business gets done. Furthermore, on that flow of business, the first meeting can be great and really positive, and then no deal materializes. And then, you don't hear anything, and then out of nowhere, a few months later, an importer is going to see an opportunity in Argentina, and then they're going to reach out to you and they're going to want to quote immediately. So you just need to be prepared for that sort of uneven nature sometimes of the flow of business. It's not going to be a US style, it's probably not going to be a US style first meeting, place the order, and you're done. It's going to be a little bit more drawn out probably. I mentioned earlier in the presentation that the Argentine government, Argentina as a major food exporter, the government sometimes prioritizes those exports and doesn't really think of itself as a food importer. And it's not that they're opposed to imports, but they just sort of assume from a governmental perspective that Argentina has all the food it needs, and they don't really devote a bunch of resources to assisting importers. And so because of that sort of neglect, Argentine food safety and regulatory systems can be a bit confusing because they're really set up to deal with the domestic market and exports. So it's really critical that you have a local importing partner who knows the rules and who knows how to work through these various processes that you're not going to be able necessarily to look up on the internet to find the forms you need. At the beginning, especially, Argentine importers may want a smaller volume of product than some American exporters are used to shipping. But I think many of you are also interested in shipping some smaller volumes. And so I think it's especially a good fit, which is one reason why we love this trade show so much. At the outset, maybe they're looking for half of a container or less. And we found that a lot of successful US exporters to Argentina benefit from using a freight forwarder or a consolidator. And, as you're probably aware, there's an ecosystem of companies like that in Miami. And we've heard from exporters that are new to shipping to Argentina. What we tell them is, if you can ship your product to Miami, then you can export it to Argentina, because those freight forwarders, those consolidators can put it together with another shipment, put it on a boat and get it down there. So you only really have to worry about getting it to Miami. Finally, you want to be a reliable partner. Sometimes sales fall through because American companies just don't have the patience for the progression involved with the first year of exporting to Argentina. And by the time that the Argentine importers line up a big sale, the US suppliers kind of moved on because they expected something to happen, a few months ago. So, I just want to remind you that it can take a little bit of time to work out the kinks. But once you do, Argentina has a tremendous pool of affluent customers who really, really, really want to access the latest US products. There's a lot of brand loyalty, and because of your unique packaging and the innovation that's found in America, your products are going to stand out. And so once you make that connection, once you build the bridge, there's real money to be made exporting US products to Argentina. This last slide here is our contact information for our office. The first email is goes to everybody in the office. The second is for my boss, who is Melinda Mador, the agricultural counselor for Argentina. We also cover Paraguay and Uruguay. And then the email below is mine. Also, those phone numbers all work as well as the fax. So feel free to reach out to us. We're really excited to come to help you out. We've got a really talented group of local staff who can help you, and some of them I think are going to be on the call that potentially help answer some questions in a minute. And then I also just wanted to mention that since we do cover Paraguay and Uruguay, both of those markets have a lot of opportunity as well. They're smaller countries in terms of population, but they both have quite an appetite for US products. And sometimes their regulatory systems can be a little bit easier to manage than Argentina. So if you have questions about those countries, I'm happy to talk to you about that as well. So thank you very much for having me here today, and I'm happy to try to answer some questions if I can.
Thank you so much, Ben. That was a great presentation. We're going to give it a few minutes to see if we get any questions populated in the chat box. And we'll be concluding this session in a few. I'd also like to remind everyone that's watching that we will upload this recorded session onto the platform within 24 to 36 hours. So in case you missed a part of the presentation, it will be available for review later. All right, it looks like we don't have any questions right now. Again, I'd like to remind the audience that you can submit your questions via the platform or send an email to Ben, who left his contact information up on the screen. I'd like to thank you for attending this session, and we will conclude now so that we can take up the next session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us today, for having me today. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with all of you, and thank you for the attendees for listening to our presentation. Things are changing really rapidly right now with COVID. Flights are resuming from the US. So just let us know, be in touch, and we can tell you sort of the latest information, and we're happy to help out. But thank you so much for having us today.
Thank you. Have a good day.